Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I was going to do a review of West Coast Avengers #1, but the more I read it, the more something else came to mind than just reviewing it. So I'm not going to actually review West Coast Avengers #1. I'm just going to use it as a jumping off point in order to try to prove my point of the fact that SJWs are just trying to reverse engineer everything. That's what they tried to do. I think that's my thesis that I'm going to put forward in this video here. That's what they tried to do, and that's what they're doing in this book. Now, when I first read West Coast Avengers #1, I was really angry with it because I loved West Coast Avengers when they originally came out. It was one of my books, and it had John Byrne doing the art, and it was fabulous, and they're just spitting on that. But I let it lie for about a day, and then I came back to it, and I wanted to give it a fair shake. I wanted it to be a little bit open-minded, give it a fair shake. So I read it again. And I read it again, and I thought, maybe it could work. It's not my type of humor, but maybe it could work. Because this woman who's writing it, I guess, to my mind, I have no clue who these people are, honestly. So I'm thinking that she's probably somebody from Generation Y who's trying to write millennial humor. And when she grew up in the 90s, she watched a lot of movies. She watched a lot of Friends. She watched a lot of, Veronica Mars and we'll say Dawson's Creek, and listened to the way that they talk and thought to herself, if I had a group of friends like that, that's how we would talk too, Yeah, that's the kind of humor, because it's like it's written by someone who never actually talked to people and doesn't know how people actually talk. So that's the kind of person you have writing this book right off the bat. And it's not my type of humor again, but we'll say, hey, maybe it's some people's type of humor, because I've seen this kind of humor book work before. I'm thinking back to, again, the 1980s, where you had Justice League America, because it was supposed to be humorous. It had a bunch of characters in it that it was a humorous book, right? Because back in the 70s when you had Justice League of America, it was kind of campy, but then into the 80s, it got really gritty, and people didn't actually want gritty from DC. So they had to cancel it, and then they came back with the exact opposite of that when they published Justice League America, and it was a silly book, right? You had the two main characters pushing forth the comedy, which were Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. You had the straight man of Martian Manhunter. You had, who else? You had the couple's humor with Scott Free and Big Barda. You had Guy Gardner, who had just been hit in the head and acting like a child all the time. You had Fire and Ice, who were the main leads for female leads, one shy, one really not, and so they had all these second to third tier characters in a group that was reflective of an older group, and they just made it a humorous book. At the same time, it was a superhero book, though, at the same time. And I thought, yeah, if they're trying to do something like that, maybe it's working. I'm not entirely sure. But I said to myself, if they're doing this, they have to step back and make sure there's no SJWism in it. But when I looked at the book itself, it's just rampant with SJWism. It is, because when you look at it, first of all, when you just look at it at first blush, you don't really see a lot of SJW in this book itself. I didn't at first, but when I just thought about it for a half a second and looked at the characters, I went, oh yeah, definitely. That's all this is. And it made me think, because I was thinking about the humor in it, right? And I was thinking, what they're trying to do is they're trying to reverse engineer the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not actual humor. It's them reversing something that's actually funny, reverse engineering something that's actually funny, trying to make it into a comic book with the endpoint idea that they're going to actually make this into a movie someday after it grows and people just latch onto it. And comedy doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. But it made me think in this vein, and it's a good vein to think in, because that's what SJWs do. They reverse engineer things, because they're socialist, communist-minded kind of people. And they basically, as a socialist, communist-minded person, you believe that the revolution is inevitable, and you're going to have your utopia on Earth, your heaven on Earth. Someday it's inevitable. It's just absolutely inevitably going to be here. And they work backwards from that point. Now, working backwards from an endpoint is an actual way to think about things, a good actual way. When you do things like use logic, you have arguments that are a priori and a posteriori, and what you do is you work backwards from a universal. But in order to get to that universal, first you got to work forward from a specific through reality in order to get the universal, and then come back with that universal and just make sure that you're always, because it's a universal, you know that you're always going to be following reality, and then explain things and go backwards from your universal. But the funny thing is with SJWs is that their endpoint is always something that has never been proven by reality. Reality has actually shown this to be not the case at every step. So when they're trying to connect those 2 points, when they're trying to reverse engineer something and saying, this is my endpoint, how do I connect that with where I am right now, they have to take this meandering path that is so convoluted, because they got to make sure that they never run into any reality that's actually going to prove them wrong. That's why they have contrivance after contrivance after contrivance in all of their stories. But that's what they're doing. They're reverse engineering things. And when I looked at the characters, it seemed to me that that's what they're doing with each one of these characters in this book. They're reverse engineering something. What they're doing is they're using stereotypes. Each one of these characters is a stereotype. And it's really hard to actually describe what SJWs do, because they don't use language in the same way that you and I and normal people would use language. They give definitions of things that are just strictly SJW definitions, which make no sense, right? So what they're doing is they're using stereotypes, but they're not the stereotypes that you and I would think of as stereotypes. They're SJW made up stereotypes. And every one of these characters is an SJW made up stereotype. First of all, you got Hawkeye, the real Hawkeye Clint, who, he has no superpowers, but he has proved himself so capable that he could stand on a battlefield with gods, and yet here he is portrayed as type A white male stereotype of an SJW, which is he is ineffectual and he doesn't know what's going on around him, and he just validates the white woman. That's type A white man. And then you got the type B white man, which is Kid Eternity, or what is it, Kid Omega, that's in this book. And he's the other B version of the stereotype, SJW stereotype of white man, because he has way too much power. He depends upon everyone else to solve his problems. And when he actually is faced with a problem, he can't actually do anything. So, those are the two stereotypes for SJW white male stereotypes. And then you got Kate Bishop, who is the white female stereotype, of course. And she is going to be validated at every turn, even though there is zero reason to actually give her any credit at all. But she has to be self-validated at every point and made like she's a god on earth because she's a white female, even though there's no reason to. So there's your SJW stereotype of a white female, and that's white female A. And then you got white female B, of course, who is Gwenpool, and she of course is the funny one. She's LOL so random humor, and she can basically, as what Gwenpool's powers basically is, she can get around all reality whatsoever. There's your SJW stereotype right there for you. She can get around reality, which is in the comic book. So, and then you have the other ones too. You have the black guy, which is the new boyfriend in it. He looks black. I'm not entirely sure if he's black or if he is supposed to be some other color, but I'll just go with he's a black guy, right? And here's the SJW stereotype of a black guy. He's supposed to be effeminate, not able to make decisions, and gets easily told what to do by the white woman who is the actual protagonist. So that's their SJW stereotype of a black man. Yeah, and the funny one, the really funny one is America Chavez. I really find it funny that America Chavez is in this book, because you have America Chavez, who is a woman, who is a minority, and who is someone... she's a lesbian, right? So there got so many things going on with her that you can't step on anybody's toes, because this is supposed to be funny, right? Just supposed to be making jokes in this book, but she's got so much going on. She's so diverse that if you make a joke with America Chavez, somebody's going to get upset. So what do they make America Chavez in this book? She is a blank staring, just white-eyed zombie with superpowers. That's what she is in this book. She's just a zombie with superpowers. And I'll probably put up a picture of it, one of the pictures from the book. That's what she looks like. She's not able to talk very much because they can't have her say very much, because she's just a zombie with superpowers. That's what she is. But the point is, the reason why that they put these SJW stereotypes in is because, of course, again, as a socialist, communist-minded people that SJWs are, they believe that nobody has an actual nature of their own. As a male, you don't have an actual male nature, or things like this. So all your nature, all the things that make you up, is constructed socially, right? So what they're doing is they're taking this endpoint that they want, which is this stereotype, this SJW stereotype that they want to actually be the stereotype for people, and then they put it out there as thick as they can, as many places as they can, so that the people who are in this group will eventually become that through the social forces acting on these people through these mediums that they're putting out there. I mean, because, stereotypes actually work. You can use them really well as a writer. I tell you, as a writer, they're actually very useful. But again, the thing is, they're useful because they're built upon reality, and that's actually something that you're going to see within these people. I mean, so many books have drunken Irishmen because there are a lot of drunken Irishmen. I'm a Scotsman. You have a lot of books that have cheap Scotsmen because there are a lot of cheap Scotsmen. It's based upon truth, and that true thing that is the nugget, that is the heart of this stereotype, is what makes it useful. But their stereotypes is a stereotype that they wish was actually true. Just look at the black guy, okay? Now, if you and I think about the stereotype of a black guy, I'm thinking in my head, let me see, not an SJW, but just a plain old normal person stereotype of a black guy. You would think of him probably as in charge, pretty muscular, probably standing 2 feet above your head and my head as well, and I'm not short, by the way, and just someone who, at the very least, makes a good show, if not is in charge, right? But no, they want the stereotype of an effeminate black guy who can't make any decisions and takes orders from the white women, because that's what they want. They want to promote that stereotype so that all the young black men or young black kids, male, that are actually reading this book are going to be socially pressured by this stereotype, this SJW stereotype that's actually out there. They're gaslighting them, is what they call it, so that they think that that's how they're actually supposed to act, so that that's how they eventually will act. So again, what they're doing is they're using these characters to reverse engineer socially what all of these stereotypes, all these SJW stereotypes, they want to implant in people. And they're again using it and putting all of this out there in a mask. Because when you have an end point and you work backwards from that end point, it's not entertainment, all right? Because their end point is their SJW perfect reality, right? They're working backwards from it. It's not actually entertainment. I did a whole video on it that I talked about. What they're doing is it's fake entertainment. Just like there's fake news, this is fake entertainment. It's not actually entertainment. It's not actually there to entertain you. It's there to teach you a lesson, is what it is. And so they're moving backwards from this end point to the point where they are, so that they can teach everybody a lesson, and they wrap it in humor in order for it to look like entertainment, so that they can get their SJW socialist communist ideology just pumped out there into as many mediums as possible. I think that's why there are so many Marvel comics, and all of them are so bad, but that's why there are so many of them right now, because they're just trying to pump it out as many ways as possible. Anyways, that was my take on West Coast Avengers #1 and most SJW books and how they use things like humor. So if I give you anything new to think about, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a message so that you can give me something new to think about, because I like to put out these ideas, get people thinking about them so that we can hopefully use them to make our comic books better. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.